Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon, and welcome to another Webinar Wednesday hosted by the Cal State Bakersfield Small Business Development Center. I'm Kelly Bearden. I'm your host today and also the SBDC director here. And we got a great topic, a wonderful special guest. Dr. Nyakundi Michieka is in the house. And we're going to talk about labor in Kern County and a lot of good things that are going to benefit our small businesses. So let's get going. The latest on labor and the job market in Kern County. That's what we're going to get today, is we're going to get the latest on labor in the job market. So we'll get into that and talk about what's going on. And we'll also talk about what a small business owner should care about as far as labor trends and how it affects them. Sure, we've got a, world-class economist in the house with us today. And he's going to be talking about an economic subject in a time with a lot of economic uncertainty. But how does it roll down to your small business? So we'll get into a little of that as we move through the webinar today. We do have three of our regular features here on Webinar Wednesday, starting with our Capital Quarter. And our Capital Quarter is going to be talking a little bit about some of the incentive programs that might be out there that makes hiring a small business easier. So if you're looking to add an employee or two or several, there's some great programs out there. We'll talk about just a couple of those quickly on our Capital Quarter today. Our economic corner today is going to be covered by the maestro himself. So I do have a slide though, because you know me, I like to, I consider myself sometimes a freelance economist. So, I have a slide for our economic corner, a regular feature here on Webinar Wednesday. Our last webinar feature for Webinar Wednesday is AI and question mark. And that is going to be how AI is going to impact job markets. And I can tell you, I'm probably going to punt this one down the road in the interest of time. And not only time in today's webinar, but time to help identify and give us a better answer to that particular question. Your answers to your questions, put those in the Q&A box, or you can go to our chat box. And also resources from today will be in our chat box. And actually, we are not going to have a poll question today. I know, perfect day for a poll question, but we got a lot to go over today, and let's jump right into it. Our regular feature Capital Quarter, there's our big bill, the $100,000 bill with former President Woodrow Wilson, circa 1934. So that's our big, beautiful bill on our cover slide for Capital Quarter. But we're going to let you know that the upcoming is our 10th annual Eastern Sierra Capital Summit. And that'll be held on Thursday, July 16th in Mammoth Lakes, California from 8 to 12. It's going to be held at the Westin Hotel there. A lot of opportunities to sign up and register and hear from a lot of different interesting loan programs. We call it the Shark Tank in reverse. What we do is we have basically, instead of entrepreneurs pitching their idea, we have lenders and also funders and financiers and those with unique programs talk about how their programs might work for everybody in the audience. So that'll be in Mammoth Lakes. We will have one coming up in the fall. Also in Tehachapi, probably one in the Western Kern area also coming up. So, but our next one is coming up on Thursday, July 16th. So one of the things that when you're accessing capital that is interesting, and some of the things that lenders might look at when they're assessing the loanability is they might look at a variety of different areas that are tied to your payroll, that are tied to your workforce. And so they might look at your payroll records and needs. They might look at your employee turnover, your hiring trends, your labor cost. And they could do this both before and during the underwriting process of approving loans. You have to remember that actually accessing capital is very subjective between the particular lenders. So it's very subjective. It's great that, there's an opportunity for you to understand this particular process and how the hiring aspect and your payroll history kind of works within that. And some of the reasons that you might see are, let's say we have two businesses here. And one of them has a stable workforce where you have low turnover and a fairly predictable payroll. You might be actually adding payroll and you might be expanding. That's perfectly fine. It's predictable, and expansion and economic growth of your business does usually result in you hiring more people. But then there's also business B, who maybe is constantly high labor shortages. One thing that we work with is they are very usually adverse to risk. So, which one looks riskier for your particular lender? Yeah, definitely SB. So, really having a stable workforce and it is really important when you are accessing capital down the road. Some of the financial some of the financial resources for hiring or for workforce training. There's a great program through America's Job Center. Locally, it's referred to here in Kern County as ETR, the Employers Training Resource, and it's the on-the-job training program, or OJT for short. And the on-the-job training program, it works fantastically in actually reimbursing you for wages that you pay an employee who you are training in a particular job. Now, usually this is a new hire, but in some circumstances and under some programs, you can actually some good promoting within your organization. But this is really one of the most underutilized hiring incentive programs we see at the SBDC that small businesses are not using enough of. And there's also variations of the OJT program. For example, when there were layoffs in the oil industry, there were displaced oil and gas workers here in Kern County. And there are on-the-job training programs specifically for that class. Now, I don't know about you, but about every person I've worked with in the oil and gas industries can be defined as, number one, a hardworking and generally a very good employee. In most cases, obviously there's exceptions, but I think in pretty much all cases. So you're hiring a good person who probably wage though in the past. And the on-the-job program for that, you would get reimbursed during the training portion 90% of that person's wage. So if you bring in that person and get them qualified through the employer's training resource, you're actually able to offset 90% of the wages while you train that individual. Normally that's 50%, but really an underutilized program that is really a great program that we see. We would like to see more of it for our small businesses. So again, just a reminder, the program works because you hire a new employee or promote an existing. The workforce system reimburses the employee for a portion of that employee's wage. It can be 50, 90%. Employers can often receive reimbursement for a percentage while they're learning, and also they're designed to offset those particular costs that are associated with bringing on a new employee. So one of the things that I also like to say is that one of the great things about kind of grant-funded programs, and we'll talk about another one here in just a second, but one of the great things is that you're actually able, since this is not money that you're contributing that is coming from outside of your organization, you can actually use that as capital and leverage that if you're looking for a particular business loan. So in this particular situation, maybe you have $20,000 in wages that are reimbursed to you, and that comes to you. Oftentimes, that can be used as capital to access or work as a down payment in getting additional capital resources. So keep that in mind. Also, there is a program through the state of California called the Employment Training Panel, ETP for short. And what it does is it reimburses for approved workforce training programs. It's funded through a special tax that employers pay. Generally, I think it's 1/10 of 1% on your payroll taxes. So you're already paying into this. Why don't you access it? Businesses kind of determine the training that they need and may receive reimbursement for eligible training that improves worker skill and retention. So some of those areas could include manufacturing skills in a manufacturing environment. It could be supervisory training, leadership development, Obviously, some technology skills can be implemented. One of the things we see more frequently is safety training, when you have a safety program that is needed to be implemented, either mandated by regulation or that helps your insurance premiums by having a valid safety program. Lean manufacturing is another, as is customer service and sales training. This is really a great opportunity, I think, for you. Going through ETP and the state of California bureaucracy, I have found, and I had one of these grants in years past, and it is a very bureaucratic type of process, but there are those in higher ed that have access to these programs. And if you contact the SBDC, send me an email crying out loud, or send an email to sbdc@csub.edu, and we can help you maybe find this type of money and these types of funds for your particular business. Our economic corner. Well, hey, I've got the economic corner cornered today with the maestro here today. So I am just going to tell you from a small business perspective what labor markets trends tend to tell us. And from a small business perspective on what is happening and what we're going to hear in just a few moments on the Kern County labor trend and the Kern County labor market is how hard it will be to hire. So we want to know, is it going to be difficult to hire? Is it going to be easier? Is it going to cost us more? Or is it going to cost us less? So what are some of the industries? It's one of my favorites. It's what industries are growing or shrinking. Are the consumers going to have money to spend? All information that every business owner can put to use, and kind of look at some of the things within your business from today's presentation and how you can actually implement that. Great opportunity to do so. Another regular feature that we have is our AI and question mark, AI and labor markets. And as I mentioned, we'll continue this at another time. This could be an entire webinar on its own, but the effect of AI on labor markets, both pro and con, is something we'll continue at another time. But talking about AI, America's SBDC has AI University, and that's AIU. You see Jay Thompson standing there, who is certified through Google's AI University program, and will soon be joined by three other SBDC advisors who have undergone incredible training. You see 24 states are working with student engagement projects. Well, we are definitely one of those and have been working with student engagement projects since the fall term and enjoyed our first academic year. And a lot of positive things coming out of AI at the SBDC. And that is one of our great tools that we have, but there are others. For example, our SBDC toolbox includes a lot of tools, as you see here on the screen. Our capital summits are coming up. For example, you see some great things here. The Kern Economic Journal. Maybe I'll throw that in a little bit. A couple of them that kind of relate to today's programming is it, the Kern Economic Journal. And yes, our guest speaker is the editor, one of the two editors of the Kern Economic Journal. Maybe he'll mention that, or maybe he'll just come back and talk about the next issue when it's out. Also, our CSUB SBDC YouTube channel. We're up to 545 subscribers and 345 videos. Subscribe and get today's webinar sent to you, the link sent to you when it's available on YouTube. A great way to watch that. And also going back in our archives on demand, you'll see the County of Kern Economic Development Resources, a webinar that we did about a year ago with Brandon Evans, the Chief Workforce Development Officer of Kern County Employers Training Resource, and he talked about the on-the-job training program in much more detail than I was able to today. If you would like confidential, no cost, no obligation expert consulting, contact us. Go to our website, CSUB SBDC, and sign up. That's all you got to do. Go to the website, click the Let's Get Started button, and let's go. Let's get on with improving and growing your particular business. We'll be back next week with 250 years of U.S. innovation, opportunity, and small business dominance. Yes, as we get ready for America's 250th birthday party. Yeah, we'll start celebrating 3 days early, so join us next Wednesday. Again, thanks so much to our great sponsors that make Webinar Wednesday possible. 382 weeks. My contact information, if you'd like more information, contact me. There's my contact information. And you might have saw us promoting this event last month and maybe back into April. The Economic Summit. Well, our speaker today was basically the star of the Economic Summit for 2026, and you're getting him today. And he is Dr. Nyakundi Michieka. And he is a professor of economics and director of the Center for Economic Education and Research at CSU Bakersfield. His primary research focuses on energy economic, environmental economics, and regional economics. His current research involves long and short run effects of oil prices in the Kern County economy. Mentioned the Kern Economic Journal and has collaborated to secure over $2 million in research funding for CSUB and is working actively with students on these particular projects. 38 research publications in energy economics, applied energy, energy policy, economic modeling, and also economic analysis and policy, originally from Kenya. Dr. Michieka has earned his undergraduate degree in mechatronic engineering. Oh boy, you got me on this one. And a master's degree from East Stroudsburg University in Pennsylvania. PhD in Natural Resource Environmental. It is my pleasure to welcome today my friend and yours too, Dr. Nyakundi Michieka.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I really do appreciate the invitation to come and speak to all of you. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning from where you're from. My name is Nyakundi Michieka, and what I will do over the next 20 to 30 minutes is first thank Kelly for having me here. Thank you for spending some time with us, and also give you an update on some of the labor market trends in Kern County. This presentation here, as Kelly mentioned, is a recap of what we spoke about. And what I will intend is take some of that data, take some of that information, take some of that amazing story and update it and tell you where we are today on data. So here's an overview of our presentation, ladies and gentlemen. The first thing we're going to do is provide an overview of labor market trends in Kern County. Now, here's some very interesting thing that we will do. One, we will ask what companies or which companies are actually hiring in Kern County. The second question is we're going to ask is what occupations are we currently seeing that have increased demand? And the third thing we're going to talk about is we're going to look at what skills employers are seeking from job candidates. Now, these are very interesting topics because typically when we look at the labor market, we look at how many people are actually employed, we look at how many jobs are actually available, but we don't actually go in and look at what positions are currently being advertised. So we will do this. We will look at what happened in March 2026, and then we're going to look at what has been happening over the last 15 years, ladies and gentlemen. So let's start off here with a story, and I'm going to introduce or motivate the topic, and then hopefully once we get into this understanding of why this is important, then we can actually see what the data is telling us. So in May 2026, May is usually a very busy month, but we had about, if you look at the graduates from CSU Bakersfield, we have graduates from BC Taft, we have folks from Porterville College, and we have about 300 more students. If you add all these numbers, we have about 6,000 folks who are going into the job market. We have 6,000 graduates. Now, there are 6,000 people going to the job market, going to look for jobs. And then we have, on average, around May, we had about 38,000 folks who are unemployed. So we have about 45,000 folks who are out there in the labor market looking to get jobs. Interestingly enough, if you look at the retention rate, and here's why I'm saying this is important, because if we have 6,000 people graduating, these guys can go anywhere in the country. But Bakersfield has been known to have a relatively high retention rate in the sense that most of the people who are born here or who live here tend to stay here. So most of these folks are going to stay here. What this slide shows is it takes a sample of about 108 metropolitan statistical areas across the country using data from the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland, and they put together a study and showed that on average, 82% of the folks here remain in Bakersfield. Now, The one place where people tend to stay most is New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. And as you look through that list, we are about number 25 on that list. So remember I said there are 108, we're about 25, and Fresno is about number 12 on the list. And then if you go all the way down to 108, that's when you get to Colorado Springs. So people are graduating, right? Many of them stay here. And then now the question is, where do they look for jobs? Okay. And that's what we're going to talk about going forward. So here's what we're going to do. First thing we're going to do is we're going to perform a job search. Okay. And what I'm doing here is telling you what we did and how we came to show you the data that we have. So if you were to graduate and you were to go look for a job, what jobs or what opportunities are you going to actually see? So if 5 of us look for all the opportunities that are out there in Kern County and or Bakersfield, we can put together a list of all the jobs that are actually available in Kern County for the month of March, for example. And we may even decide, why don't we do this? Why don't we look for all the jobs that were advertised, not only March, but we can look at the last 15 years and actually put those jobs in a database and actually ask ourselves a question. What jobs are we actually seeing being advertised, and what are we seeing? In other words, we're asking a good question. What is the labor demand? What does the labor market actually want? And that's different from the labor supply. Labor supply is the 45,000 folks I said who are out there looking for jobs. And then the labor demand is what companies are hiring. So typically, this is where a grad would look. You'd look at LinkedIn, you'd look at Indeed, you'd look at Inside Higher Ed. So many amazing opportunities. And you can find positions in all these places. So we're going to compare two scenarios. We'll first look at the advertised positions. Oh, their bubbles is showing up, which is awesome. We're going to look at the jobs that were advertised in March 2026. Okay, that's most recent data. And then we're going to look at how jobs have been advertised over the last 15 years and see what the labor market has been telling us over the last 15 years. And then we're going to look at March, and when we're going to look at the last 15 years and see what difference do we have, or where do we see changes in those two particular scenarios. Okay, so these slides, the next 10 to 15 slides are going to look like this. Actually, they're not 10, they're about 7. So first, in March, we had about 6,000 unique postings in Kern County. 6,000. Now, remember we said there were 6,000 graduates and we had an unemployment number out there, but there were 6,000 unique postings. And when we talk about unique, it means that this is a position that may be posted in very many different places. But we had about 6,000 unique postings, and these were posted for about 12 days. That's as long as these jobs were actually posted. The other thing we got to ask is this. The companies, how many companies did we see out there? We had about 1,500 companies, and the median salary was about $75,000, which is close to what the median salary is in Kern County and in Bakersfield. But what about the last 15 years? Yikes. We've had about 813,000 postings. Postings lasted on average 21 days. Now, in the last chunk of information I just talked about, I didn't talk about the postings, but here, this is really important. On average, jobs are posted for 12 days in Kern County, right around now. But back then, they used to be posted for a longer time. So you have less of a time to apply for a job now as compared to what has been going on in the previous 10 to 15, actually 15 years since 2010. And the median salary has changed and the number of companies posting is right there. So let's see how many postings have been posted over time. If you were to look at this graph, it shows you the number of unique postings. So here's what I'm saying. Remember this 6,000 number I'm talking about in March 2026? It means that if you were to look at all the websites all over the place, you were to look at Indeed, LinkedIn, Jobs, whatever, all those websites, there would be about 6,114 jobs available for you to apply to. And these numbers have changed. Now, if you were to look at the numbers since 2010 to 2018, you'll see that they were lesser. But our data set here, remember, goes out and looks at what's posted on the internet. So the way this data is obtained is you have these bots which literally go out and they look at all the available sources or all the available jobs out there and picks them all up and puts them in a database for us to look at. So On average, we had, the last, from 2010 to 2018, there were less jobs that were posted, possibly because people used newspapers. And then over the last 5 or 6 years, we've seen an increase in the postings that are online, which probably explains why this graph increases as it does. Okay, so let's keep this show moving. Let's keep it moving. Okay, so we've seen what the postings were. So who's hiring? And now we're going to look at what happened in March 2026, and then we're going to look at what's been happening over the last 15 years. So in March 2026, Adventist Health were the lead in terms of postings. They had the most postings out there. And then you had KCCD, PG&E, you have UC Davis. We do have a few search firms. We have Soliant Health, which specializes in recruiting healthcare workers for schools and hospitals. And then interestingly enough, Starbucks appears on the list, right? Starbucks appears on the list. Walmart also appears on the list, and Dollar General also appears on the list. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the top hiring companies, or the companies that had the most ads in March of 2026. Now, things could have changed in April, things could have changed in May, but here we're going to look at the scenario in March. And let's look at what's been happening over the last 15 years. Over the last 15 years, these are the top companies, or the companies that have the most ads if you're to look at all the websites. So you have Common Spirit Health, Common Adventist Health. We have a lot of health. The word health is going to show up a lot, and I'll get back to that at the end of this presentation. KCCD, you have Randstad, Apple One. As I move down this list, there are some health recruiting companies, but I also want to let you know that there are companies that recruit folks who are in finance, accounting, auditing, marketing, right? In fact, Robert Half and Creative Financial Staffing are companies that specialize in those fields. If you look all the way to the bottom, you have Aerotech. Aerotech specializes in mining, construction, manufacturing, logistics. These are companies which are very significant in terms of their footprint here in Kern County. And these are the ones which have seen, or where we're seeing a large posting or large presence in terms of the availability of jobs. Okay. So these are the companies that have been hiring. Okay. Let's move on to the next slide and ask, so what jobs are we seeing out there? Now think about this. Imagine if you're a grad student or you've just graduated and you're looking for a job, what positions would you see out there appearing the most times? Boom. Registered nurses, truck drivers, retail, salespersons, and actually retail shows up twice here on this list. But the other interesting industry that shows up here significantly is health. So we have a lot of healthcare. There's a lot of demand for healthcare workers or folks who work in the healthcare industry as of March 2026. And right down there, we see physicians and speech pathologists. I'll talk about why some of these fonts appear in red and why others appear in black. And here's what is going to lead to that discussion. Over the last 15 years, the largest number of ads we've seen are registered nurses, truck drivers. The retail industry has actually, it has a dynamic hiring industry. And also, one thing you'll notice is that over the last 15 years, we used to see a lot of customer service reps being sought after, but we're not seeing that lately. We're not seeing that recently or, within the, near past. If you look at administrative assistants, those do not appear, sometime in March. So the reason why I have red and black font is anything that appears on red, it means that it does not appear on both columns. So registered nurses, for example, appears in March 26. There was high demand for it in March 26, and there's been consistently high demand for it over the last 15 years. But the font that appears in red font here just shows that it is something new that is showing up. So PTs or physical therapists, speech language pathologists, those ones are things that we're seeing more demand for right now. So those are the jobs. Now let's move on to the skills. What skills are we seeing the labor market asking for, right? What are we seeing employers ask for? So a lot of the jobs had the word nursing appear. It had the word lifting ability. The word auditing appeared in a lot of the postings. And treatment planning, medical records, and CPR all the way to the bottom. So this is what we saw in March. And I put the word there today, but when I say today, it also just means March 2026. Let's look at the last 15 years and see what it is. Lifting ability has consistently shown up. Nursing has also consistently shown up. But accounting, which showed up a lot for the last 15 years, now doesn't really show up or didn't show up in March. But remember, interestingly enough, this was right before tax season, all right? It was in the heat of tax season. So March, April, possibly seeing an increase in demand for folks who work in accounting and auditing. The marketing industry also did not feature so much in today's job postings, and project management or selling techniques did not feature a lot. So those are the skills that we saw appear a lot in the job postings. Remember, this is like someone who goes into the internet and says, okay, in all the jobs that are posting, which word do I see appear a lot in many of these postings? And that's what this slide here explains. Okay. So we'll move on to the next slide. And in terms of specialized skills, let's also think about something called software, right? Because companies also seek individuals who have certain skills in software. So here are some of the software skills that have been sought after in March 2026, and we're going to compare this with the last 15 years. So today, a lot of the companies or a lot of the industry, a lot of the people who are hiring are looking for folks with proficiency in Excel, Office, Outlook, PowerPoint, right? MS Word, right? Very, very interesting. The more I looked at this, the more I said, wow, Bill Gates, Microsoft, we've seen a lot of Office packages feature in today's workforce demand. And that also has not changed over the last 15 years, right? These are consistent in what employers want or in what employers seek. Now, very interestingly, if you were to look at today's software skills, all the way at the bottom there, you might see something called dashboards. So there's an increase in demand for folks who can build dashboards. And that has been coming up in a lot of the conversations that we have today with our colleagues and a lot of small businesses out there. Productivity software refers to software or programs that make work easier. We're talking about Slack, we're talking about Zoom, we're talking about Microsoft 365 or Google Workforce or Worksheet. So these are the skills that employers are looking for. They're looking for folks who are proficient in these areas. And if you were to look at the last 15 years, very interestingly, operating systems featured a lot, and Microsoft Access featured a lot, and doesn't feature that significantly today. So very, very interesting findings we have here in terms of the skills. And all I just want to say is this: the skills that employers have been looking for over the last 15 years have remained relatively constant and consistent over time. So why do people look for a new job? And I like to ask this because it's very, very interesting. We're small business folks here, and to recruit the right people, you want to have the right incentives. In other words, what can you offer workers so that they come work for you and they're happy and they work productively? Work-life balance has been a big thing that folks have actually listed as a reason for them to seek other opportunities. Pay, job security. Some people actually leave because they have a bad manager, or some folks actually just want to go find another job because they seek more autonomy in the work that they do. And a few of us actually would probably want to work for a good brand or just work for an organization that's diverse. And that's a reason, that's a draw for people to leave one company or one organization and move to the other. Others move from one place to another because they're seeking professional growth, and others may just do that because they want to work for a company that has a good cause or that does good deeds. Very, very interesting findings here, ladies and gentlemen. Remote work has also come up significantly. A few of us maybe move to other places and we probably prefer to work remotely, and others just, there are very, very many other reasons. So this is just a list of people take on a new job. Now, as we have these conversations, please feel free to type in your questions and I'll be happy to answer those as we progress. So these are some of the reasons why people would seek a new job. Now, that brings us to this slide here of benefits. So benefits are what we're seeing listed in very many of the job opportunities out there. So insurance, a lot of companies are posting their jobs out there, and they're saying that, we offer insurance, retirement and savings, paid leave, education, career and development, and work-life balance. Interestingly enough, this slide did not appear one and appear another. They appeared at the same time. And the reason why they appeared at the same time is because what employers were offering to potential workers has not changed over time. So what we saw being offered in March 2026 and what we've seen being offered over the last 15 years has not changed. So this slide here highlights the fact that these are the main things that have featured as top benefits for companies that are looking to hire people for their company. So these benefits have remained the same over time. Okay. So one other interesting thing is people ask, so where can I go look for a job? Where are the top posting sources, right? And this is what may help someone who's looking on the market right now or someone who's trying to find a job. We know the usual, Indeed, Simply Hired, Door, D-Jobs. Now, these are companies or these are sources where people actually post jobs, and this is where people actually find jobs. The ones in red are the ones that are relatively newer or the ones that we're featuring today that have not featured over the last 15 years. Over the last 15 years, Indeed.com, Simply Hired, Glassdoor.com, DJobs. Interestingly, I saw that Craigslist appears on this list twice. Over the last 15 years and very recently, Craigslist is a big place to find a job, right? And some of these sources have changed over time. For example, if I was to look at the last 15 years, BakersfieldRecruiter.com was a big source for people to go and apply for jobs, but it doesn't feature over the last, over the last month of March or April and May. Oracle and jobs.com have featured significantly. So these are places where folks can go look for jobs. So you can take a screenshot of this, or you can record some of these places as places that you can go look. Now, I've used this joke before, but I'm going to repeat it. If you've heard this joke before, it's fine. But I'm sure some of us are sitting there with our bosses, and we're like, ooh, and you're giving each other the look. Am I going to take a screenshot of this, or am I going to take a picture of this? Maybe one day. Anyway, we keep it moving. So in summary, over the last 15 years, jobs are posted for a much lesser time, possibly because with phones, we can use gadgets. It's easier to access these jobs. So the length of postings has actually reduced from 21 days, from 3 weeks to about a week and a half, a week and some change, or 2 weeks. The number of job postings has also increased, and RN positions also were a lot, right? There were a lot of RN positions, there were a lot of truck driving positions that were advertised. We've seen a lot of increase in demand for specialized skills in healthcare and data. And also what's been consistent is the software skills that are being requested by hiring agencies have remained largely the same over time. So what about ag and energy, right? We come from Kern County, right? Large oil producing region, significant ag producing region. Why have they not featured in this? And I just want to talk a little bit about these two industries. So over time, this is what we're seeing. Now, this chart here shows employment in the three industries. I talk about ag, oil, and healthcare, just because that's the conversation we're having. There's so many other industries that I would have loved to have here, but just for the sake of having a screen and a presentation that fits your page really well and is visually good for you guys to see, I just said, let's just focus on these three, because we do have Edwards Air Force Base. We have a large military presence in East Kern. We have a large tourism presence in East Kern. I will not talk about those. I just want to focus on these things for now. So ag, the number of ag employees over the last 15 years has increased by about 13,000, from 44,000 to about 57,000. Oil and gas employment has reduced, but healthcare employment has gone up by 23,000, right? That's over the last 15 years. So we're seeing an increase in healthcare workers. And this graph here shows the trends in what we're talking about, right? Oil and gas workers employment has gone down. This is something that we know. Healthcare employment has also gone up, and ag employment has, relatively stayed the same, though it has increased by just a marginal number. And this graph here, what I have here is a pie chart. And what I want to show here is, look at this. If you were to look at healthcare workers, in 2010, 9% of the workers in Kern County were in healthcare, and about 4% were in oil and gas, and ag was about 16%. How have these numbers changed over the last 15 years? Ladies and gentlemen, I pose that question to you. And I'll actually give you the answer in the next slide right there, right? Healthcare workers, I'm going to start from healthcare at the bottom. Healthcare has gone up by about 4%, and oil and gas workers has gone down by 2%, has become half, and ag employment has actually stayed relatively the same at about 17% from 16% in 2010. So those are the dynamics that we're seeing shifting. And as a small business owner, I want us to think about how to capitalize on some of these and see where the opportunities arise for us in terms of expanding or growing our business. In terms of wages, employment has moved in this round. Actually, I shouldn't say the word employment. Wages. If you were to look at this graph, there are a lot of lines. All I want to show you is these are real wages or just wages over the last 25 years in Kern County. And what I want to show is we just show the pay the most and those that have been paying, how those numbers have been changing over time. So the purple line shows that utilities, folks who work in the utilities industry are the highest earning, right? And, utilities, and then you also have management of companies and enterprises. But oil and gas workers are also significantly highly paid. In fact, on average, oil and gas workers are paid $40,000 more on average than the average worker, right? So significantly highly paid. And then you have the red line there, which shows you the healthcare assistance workers. So healthcare workers earn about $50,000. That's the average annual pay over time. So ag, healthcare, and oil are two. What I want to do is we talk about ag and oil a lot, but I'm now introducing healthcare into the conversation as an emerging industry for Kern County, and that's what some of the last few slides have been showing. So in terms of contribution of oil and gas, I like to show this slide because what it does is that it brings us to the question of who actually drives the economy, or where do we see an increase in economic growth by industry. So we break down all the industries and say, okay, if all of us were to push this car or push this Kern County economy, where do we see people pushing more? Or what industries do we see people pushing more? So in the last data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, or the last data set that was put out there, ag actually drove the economy, had a significant push in the economy. But this was just 1 year. If you're to look at the last 25 years, you'll find that oil featured a lot, ag featured a lot, and then you have what we call finance, insurance, real estate. That has actually been featured a lot, and also manufacturing. So where I'm going with this is, even though we're seeing healthcare, industry hiring a lot, the traditional industries continue to feature a lot in the conversations that we have and in the economy. So if you're to look at employment by industry over time, this is data that just came out as of May 2026. You can see that farming employees were out there. We had about 55,000 workers. We had folks working mining and logging, about 6,000 work. And federal government had about 9,000. But let me move up to leisure. Leisure and hospitality was about 30,000. But yeah, I just wanted to put this out there just to kind of bring us back to where people have jobs, or the jobs that are, or the industries that are hiring the most number of workers. Okay. So in summary, the occupations that we're seeing that are in highest demand today, we're seeing healthcare, which is emerging right there. A lot of skills that employers are seeking are in healthcare, and a lot of the software skills are the Microsoft Office packages. And some of the traditional, actually not some, but the two traditional industries are still driving Kern County's economy. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've been with me so far, and I'm going to move on to some takeaways. So the last three slides are going to be takeaways for small business. So as a small business owner, why should I really, how has this presentation helped me, or what has it provided? What information has it provided? The first thing is, as a small business owner, you can think of how to position yourself to benefit from the growth in healthcare workers, right? There's so many really cool things that you can think about. And, if you're trying to think about how to support the healthcare, you can think of how do you provide healthcare supplies, or you can think of medical staffing. How do I support the staffing that is being requested by these companies? You can also think about services, providing services for healthcare workers or services for healthcare organizations. Another thing to think about is it's important to think about how to invest in the workforce development here in Kern County. We know that a lot of our folks stay in town, 82%. That's a good number. And as a small business, you can collaborate with academic institutions, or collaborate with folks who are putting out workers. And Kelly mentioned some of those, and see how to tap into that workforce that is here. Small business workers can also, or small business owners can use technology and data more efficiently, and can also offer a compelling employee experience. All this means is that you can look at some of those benefits that were being offered and capitalize on those as ways to recruit the right people to come and work for you, right? And it's actually important to even say this: employees want more than pay. It's just not pay, there are all these amazing benefits. Finally, traditional industries are still very influential, but we're seeing some really great growth in the healthcare industry in Kern County. So those are opportunities. So in closing here, I'm going to just kind of bring you guys up to speed on some of the amazing things that are happening at CSUB with the economics department, with the College of Business. We do have a report that came out that looks at the contribution of the oil and gas industry on Kern County's economy. So that report is out there, and it just focuses on the labor market, ladies and gentlemen. Labor market, ladies and gentlemen. So that's one report that came out. In terms of ongoing studies, we do have some work that's looking at economic resilience in California's top oil producing region, right? We're seeing a lot of changes. We're seeing a lot of great things. We're seeing a lot of things that are affecting our main industry, how to position ourselves to be resilient to external shocks that may impact our economy here in Kern County. So there's some ongoing work on that. And we talked to some really great stakeholders. Our amazing director of the SBDC, Kelly Bearden, was there, a few other great folks from the community, and we had a discussion on how do we pivot Kern to move forward. Third research project that is ongoing is we're looking at workforce development. There's what the market wants in Kern County, and there's what or who we're putting out there. Are these two matching? How do we get them to match and read from the same sheet of music or collaborate in a way that we're putting out graduates that actually are needed by our local economy? And then finally, we have our amazing Kern Economic Journal, which Kelly talked about not too long ago. And please feel free to subscribe and reach out and keep in touch with us, and you can get updates on where the economy is headed. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for your last 20 to 30 minutes. My name is Nyakundi Michieka. That's just a copy of the report. Feel free to reach out if you're interested, and I'm always happy to reach out in case you have any questions. I'm going to give it on to our amazing host here, Kelly.
Wow, fantastic stuff. Okay, so now's a great time for you to actually be able to ask some questions. So we're going to go through the questions. I know you have some because I've already seen one. And let me go to that one first. Give people time to come up with some more questions. We got some in here, but let's go get some more.
Thank you.
And this is something you probably don't have much economic research data on, but the big thing in the labor market and also what's going on are AI data centers. So is there much going on in Kern County, or do you see much, or what are some of the limitations, or what are your thoughts on AI data centers?
That's a great question. So data centers are, we're now realizing that these are resources that we need. And we're also realizing that these are resources that require a lot of water, they require a lot of energy, they require so much from the community. Here in Kern County, we've not developed a center yet, or we've not developed resources for that, but it is an ongoing discussion. I believe there's some discussion taking place in East Kern, but I have not come to figure out where we've reached in terms of those discussions. So very, very great topic, very, very great thing to discuss. But right now we're still having discussions on that. So I don't really have a direct answer on that. I'm sorry, but we just, we still don't have one here.
And that's the great thing about Webinar Wednesday. You can ask a question because there's nothing screened here. So ask away and we will try to do our best at getting that. So let's jump into the questions that, and let's go with this first one. How should the data inform colleges and universities that prepare our students for multiple degree fields? Are we meeting the needs of our students for them to be successful in their career searches?
This is a great question. And so the data that we see here is actually data that has actually been dredged or pulled out from the current employers that are seeking to hire people. So what we can do with this data is, I believe, use this to have, to bring together folks from the universities or from the colleges and bring together employers and have them have conversations on what do we see in terms of gaps, or where can we see, where can we have competitive advantage in putting out the right workers out there in the community. So this just actually puts out a platform for employers, and it puts out a platform for academic institutions to start having conversations on how to fill those gaps. And that's why I mentioned that we have a project that's looking at workforce development, which is going to focus on Kern County. We're going to focus on the city. We're going to focus on the county. We're going to focus on, are we filling the gap of hiring the people that the companies need here? So this is actually a start to that. Thank you for that. It's a great, great question.
Okay, well, let's hit our chat box and see what we got in there. So first of all, some greetings and salutations and some links in there that our producer Maureen Busher-Dang has put in. Thank you, Maureen, including the employer's training resource. A link there. You can email me anytime you have a question, whether it's an AI project from the SBDC, something about our YouTube channel, or whatever. A little bit about some of the economic developments from the County of Kern. That particular webinar is linked there, as is contact information for the good doctor. Also, some Google reviews if you're so compelled. So not a lot of questions there. So let's go back and see if we have other questions in our Q&A. There's one here that says there's a significant increase in healthcare workers. That is great. Obviously, like many places, Kern County does have illness and sickness. What are we not doing right? And you are a doctor, so I guess you are qualified to answer this question. What are we not doing right?
I thank you for that question. It's a great question. I am a doctor, but I'm not the right doctor in terms of answering the sickest population. But one of the things that we need to acknowledge is that we need to collect data on trends. We need to collect data on how we're doing as a county, as a region, and we need to use this data to actually come up with solutions. So if we're seeing a particular gap in maybe we need to address a certain issue in healthcare, I think continued data collection, continued discussions, and continued tracking of where we are will be really, really important. And these are possibly happening. They're really happening, and it's just it's a start, and it's development in solving some of these. So just to answer the question, data collection, having continued conversations, and having very sober conversations on how to actually solve these issues, I believe would be a step in solving that. But also the doctors, the real doctors who work with the stethoscopes are folks that should be in these conversations and can guide us on how to solve these. Great question. Thank you very much.
Next question is, given that a significant percentage of Kern County residents remain in the region, which factors prevent stronger collaborations between larger employers, education institutions, and workforce development agencies? And what does the research say about why employers do or do not engage in workforce partnerships? I'm going to take a stab at this first because you hit three factors that kind of hit right here with me, except for the large employers. So obviously hosted in an employee of an educational institution and been on the workforce development board. I think there are a lot of things that are getting done right. And I think that you see it with larger employers with, for example, the on-the-job training program. You see larger employers take advantage of that to where we have a real kind of gap is with smaller employers. So I think that there are many things that are being done right. I think that, with a lot of strong organizations, the County of Kern is very dedicated to economic development. We have a strong Economic Development Corporation in the KEDC and a lot of partnerships that are going on. So I'm going to say it's just the two factors that dominate our lives all together, and those are time and money. So that is the thing why things probably aren't better, but I think things are, from what I see out there, engaging with workforce development and with CSUB and a lot of the employers I work with, I think I see a lot of really good things going on as far as workforce partnerships. What about you, Doctor?
I do. That's a great segue. In fact, so if you look at what we're talking about here, we're talking about employers, we're talking about universities, we're talking about the city, we have the county, and we have all these organizations that know that we need to match employees with the correct employers. And as a student or as a graduate or someone who's an employee or someone who's looking to move, I believe it's important to seek out these entities and see what resources they have for matching these two groups together. Because it's in the end, it becomes a win-win for an employee. If you're an employer and you're trying to find someone who can do the job that you want well and efficiently, I think it's a win if you get the right person. So there's will from all these institutions that I just talked about. I think we just have to find ways of seeking this information and being part of these decisions, like the work that Kelly is doing right now with the Small Business Development Center. A lot of resources here. Every time I sit here, I learn so much from the first 10 to 15 minutes. And those are good places to sign on and just be part of those conversations.
So, last chance to get a question in for the good doctor, but not that kind of doctor. Um,
They got good questions. So these are really
yeah.
great questions.
And you know, I like to throw a question at him, you know, at times that he doesn't know about that's coming. So, what do you see? You do so much good, positive work in the energy sector. What are some of the things from your work that you're seeing that make you bullish about the future of energy here in Kern County?
It's a great question. So I've been working on energy for the last for 12 years since when I joined CSUB. And I believe Kern has one in terms of the future. We have a very willing and able workforce. We do have a willing and, well, I was going to say willing and able, but the geological structures and the natural resources that we possess put us out there in terms of they put us number one in terms of being able to tap into this. So not only are we big in oil and gas, we do have a lot of strength in renewable energy sources. We do have geological structures that we can use, for example, to do carbon capture and storage. So looking at some of these areas, it's very important to see that we have a government that is also willing, local government that's also willing to work with us, workforce, geologic structure, and academic institutions that are working together to at least be able to pivot and move on or actually take what we currently have and redevelop and redesign. So in terms of strength, I think we're well positioned to be resilient and adapt to some of the changes that we're seeing coming our way.
And along that same topic is a question about how do you plan to go about the workforce development? That's a pretty open-ended question. I would say that there's a lot of uncertainty. I mean, I talked a little bit earlier about economic uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty in workforce development and job creation and you know, the impact that AI is going to have. We didn't talk about today, but we'll talk about someday. That would be my 2 cents on going about workforce development. But you know, there's a really good at ETR, the Employers Training Research Resource, and the Kern Annual Mono Workforce Development Board. I think there are a lot of very positive things going on as far as meeting the needs of workforce and maybe future workforces as well. Okay, the next question, are we seeing Kern County employers hiring employees versed in AI, and how do we compare to other regions in regard to what that means? I will give the doctor the benefit of the doubt, and I will take this first. And at least as far as small businesses, we do participate, thanks to those of you in our audience that take the Federal Reserve Bank's credit survey, and they have an AI function in that, and I haven't looked at it. But what I did look at is the adoption of AI in small businesses compared to the Southern San Joaquin Valley, basically Kern Inyo Mono counties, and also the 4 counties around Fresno. So where there's basically 7 counties of data that we have specific data on. And I can tell you that as far as AI adoption is that we are doing a little bit less than what is being done nationally. Now, there have been some strides that we've taken here at the SBDC. Like I mentioned, we have significant AI groups that are working on issues and problems. We'll be talking about a lot of those, but there's some really great tools that are coming out of this. And these are tools that are coming from our student workers from CSUB and our interns, and coming up with some great projects that we'll be talking about and are already sharing with a lot of employers right now. Anything to add to that?
No, that's great. That's actually really great.
Okay, well, I will add to this that we're out of time. We're a minute past.
Oh, wow.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Webinar Wednesday number 383. We'll be back next week. Webinar Wednesday number 384 on the great American economy. Opportunities. There's so many opportunities moving forward in the next 250 years that's going to be starting really soon. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of that, some of the great lessons that we learned in the past that still apply. And for my very good friend, Dr. Nyakundi Michieka, I'm Kelly Bearden. Everybody have a great day out there. So long, everybody.
Thank you, guys.